Hey everyone, this is Pallavi and today I'm going to show the 17th game of the book Logical Chess Move by Move by Irving Chernev. This game was played between Pillsbury and Mason in 1895 in Hastings. In this game, we will see Pillsbury applying the great power of the Queen's Gambit to crush an opponent who is not familiar with its fine points and who puts up less than flawless defense. So let's start. So White started with d4, controlling the center and also making way for the bishop to come out. Black played d5. Equalizing the pressure in the center stops White from playing e4 and also releases two of his own pieces, the bishop and the queen. Now White played c4. The objective of this move is to destroy Black's pawn center, the d5 pawn, attacking the d5 pawn. Now White offers a pawn to induce Black to surrender the center. If that does not work, White threatens to dissolve it by playing c takes d5. Here White is planning to play c takes d5 if Black captures queen takes d5 and then knight c3, attacking the queen and also developing the knight. And when the queen moves away, White can play e4 and White controls most of the center. So after c4, Black played e6. Black defends the center pawn by supporting it. He did not care to capture d cross c4 as that means surrendering the center to gain a pawn which he cannot hold on to. So after e6, Black is also making way for his f8 bishop to come out. So after e6, now White played knight to c3, settling a minor piece to its suitable square without loss of time. It controls the e4 square and also attacking the central pawn on d5, adding pressure to it. So after this, Black played knight f6, a natural development of the g8 knight towards the center, controlling the e4 square and also supporting the d5 pawn. White played bishop to g5, a highly efficient move as it combines rapid piece development with a threat. The threat being c takes d5. Here c takes d5, e takes d5 and then bishop takes f6, queen takes f6 and knight takes d5 wins a pawn. If instead of queen takes f6, if Black captures with the pawn and Black's kingside pawn position is shattered. So after bishop g5, that was White planning. So here Black played bishop to e7, developing the bishop which unpins the f6 knight, also making way for castle. Now White played knight to f3. In queen pawn openings, the king's knight, the g1 knight's job is to control the e5 square, and sometimes the occupation of this outpost, the e5, by moving the knight to e5. So in fact, settling the knight on e5, supporting it solidly by d pawn, and f pawn is the motive, and d pawn and f pawn is the motive of what later came to be known as the Pillsbury attack, a tremendously effective assault on the king's side. So White can play after that f4 to attack Black's king side. So after knight f3, Black played b6. Black wants to develop his bishop from b7, a fianchetto. So it is very important that Black should play c5 sooner or later as it strikes White's the d5 pawn and creates a tension in the center. Open c file for his major pieces and frees his crowded position on the queen side. Failing to make this move allows White to seize control of the c file and the c5 square. Should White manage to post a piece on that square, it will exert terrific pressure on Black's entire position, and this one factor alone can cause Black's downfall. So after b6, now White played e3, strengthening the center and also making way for the bishop to come out. Now Black played bishop to b7, completes the fianchetto, Development of the c8 bishop. Now white played rook to c1. The rook hurries over to the important c file. This is only partly open now, but an exchange of the pawns will clear the file and accentuate the rook's power along its whole length. So after rook c1, black played d cross c4. Black usually waits until white moves his f1 bishop before making this capture, as then the bishop loses a move in recapturing the c4 pawn. Apparently, black is anxious to give his b7 bishop more scope along this diagonal, long central diagonal. So after d cross c4, white captured bishop cross c4. White develops and also recaptures the pawn. Now black played knight b d7. This is a good move. This development of the knight from d7 is characteristic in queen's pawn openings, as it does not block the c pawn, which developing the knight from c6 does, and also from d7 it supports the advance of the e5 and c5 pawn. So here it is supporting this e5 and c5 square, attacking the center. The knight on d7 also cooperates with the knight on f6. After knight b d7, white played castle. Goes for king safety and rook activation, and black too played short castle with the same idea. Now white played queen a2. Develops while adding pressure on of the advance of the e4. Also, white can attack on the queen side by playing bishop to a6. Can force an exchange of bishops and then bring pressure on black's light squares weakened by the removal of the controlling bishop, of the bishop controlling those squares. So when the bishop gets exchanged, these light squares will be controlled by white. So after queen e2, now black played knight to d5. Trying to free his position by bringing about an exchange or two. Now white played bishop cross e7. White is willing to simplify by clearing away some pieces, as he can then return to his theme of exerting painful pressure on the c file. So after bishop cross e7, black captured queen cross e7, develops and recaptures. Now white played knight cross d5. This time the knight exchange suits white, which now can dictate the course of events. Let's see that e takes d5. Now if black had captured bishop takes d5, then bishop takes d5, pawn takes bishop, and then rook takes c7, loses a pawn. So after knight takes d5, black captured with the pawn. Now white played bishop to b5. The file is suddenly open and the c file action begins with the rook's attack on the pawn, the c7 pawn. Black played queen to d6. Guarding the c7 pawn and preparing to play c6 and dislodge the bishop, it is already too late to advance the pawn to c5, as after c5, instead of queen to d6, white can play bishop takes d7, queen takes d7, d takes c5, b takes c5, and rook takes c5, wins a pawn. So that's why black played queen to d6. Now white played rook to c2. Makes room for the other rook to c1 to add more pressure. Now black played c6, trying to get rid of the annoying bishop. Now white played bishop to d3, much stronger than bishop to a4. When black gets some troublesome counterplay by b5, then bishop b3, and then a5, threatening to win the bishop by e4. So white has to play a3 and then knight to b6. And the knight settles itself firmly at c4. So that is why white played bishop to d3 instead of bishop to a4. Now black played knight to f6, trying to relocate the knight on a good square but unaware of the upcoming danger. With this move, black lost the chance of playing c5, establishing a state of tension in the center and give his pieces more room to move around in. So after knight f6, white played rook fc1. This prevents black from moving to c5. And the rooks are now doubled. Now black played rook a c8, rushing to the defense of the c pawn and renewing the possibility of pushing the pawn to c5. White played bishop to a6. White is trying to remove black's bishop since minor pieces are excellent defenders of pawns that are attacked by the heavy pieces. So black played bishop cross a6. Had black played rook to c7, then bishop takes bishop, rook takes bishop, and rook takes pawn on c6. And had black played queen to c7, then b4. Further restrains the pawn, after which white intensifies the pressure by knight to e5. Simplifies by exchanging the bishops, and then takes the pawn off. So after bishop a6, black captured bishop cross a6 and white captured queen cross a6. Now the queen comes closer, attacking not only the a pawn directly but also the c pawn indirectly by queen b7. So black played rook to c7, saving the a pawn and also preventing white from playing queen to b7. Now the rook c7 is also preparing to play rook to c8, the f rook to c8 to double up the rook. Also, instead of rook c7, had black played queen to b7. Sorry, that's the idea. Queen b7 and rook c7. Then rook takes c6, rook takes b7, and then rook cross d6. And white wins a pawn. So after rook c7. Now white played knight to e5, piling up more pressure to the c pawn. Black played c5. The planned rook fc8 lets white win nicely by knight takes pawn, rook takes knight, queen takes c8, check, rook takes queen, and then rook captures rook c8, and then queen f8, rook captures queen, king captures rook, rook c7 attacking the a7 pawn, pawn pushes to a5 and rook b7, and white wins easily. So after knight e5, black played c5. Now white played rook cross e5. Black cannot capture the rook as the pawn is pinned. Now black played rook cross c5. White played rook cross c5 and now black played knight to d7 attacks the two pieces. White played rook to c6, gaining time by attacking the queen. Black played knight b8, forced, as if black had played queen to e7, then rook c7 pinning the knight, and if rook comes to support the knight, then queen b5 and white wins a piece. And moving the queen anywhere else, let's say queen to b4, would simply lose the knight. So after rook c6, black was forced to play knight to b8. Now white captured rook takes d6, black recaptured the queen, and now white played a good move, knight c6, where white did not grab the d pawn and let black seize the c file by playing rook to c8. So after knight c6, with knight c6, black is attacking the a pawn and prevents black from playing rook to c8, as if black plays rook to c8, then knight to e7, and it's a fork. So after knight c6, black played g6. The king is trying to move out by g7. Now white played knight cross a7. Another pawn falls, while two other pawns are attacked by the rook, the d5 and the b6 pawn. Now black played rook to a8. Unable to get to c8, the rook makes efforts to enter the fight. Now white played knight to c6. Still not allowing black to play rook c8 because of the knight e7 fork. Now black played king to g7, moving the king out of range from the knight, check, and closer to the center. Now white played a3. There is no hurry in taking the d pawn. White guards his own a pawn from any discovered attack on it by the black rook. So after a3, now black played rook to c8, finally posting the rook on the coveted file. But can black make use of it? White played g4. White's king also need an escape square. So after g4, black was actually planning to play after rook c8 to play knight to b8. So if the white knight captures, black can checkmate from back rank. So that's why white played g4. Now black played knight to c7. Black protects the d pawn, and now white played knight to e7. Once again chasing the rook away from the open c file, and now black played rook to b8. Supports the b pawn which was attacked by the white rook. Now white played rook d7, still keeping the pressure. If white had captured knight cross d5 and then knight cross d5 and rook cross d5 is also a winning position for white. So after rook d7, now black played knight to e6 and then white captured knight cross d5. The d pawn falls while giving a passed pawn for white, the d pawn. Now black played rook to c8. To get some counterplay on the open file, black gave up the b pawn. Now white played knight cross b6, leaving white with three passed pawns, the a3, b2 and the d4 pawn. Now black played rook c2. Occupying the 7th rank by a rook is the next logical step of controlling an open file with a rook. This could mean trouble for white, except that white has powerful replies with all those pawns ready to be promoted. Now white played b4, saves the pawn and also pushes towards the promotion square. Now black played knight g5. Black is trying to attack white's deserted king with his knight and rook. White played a4, a good move. White keeps on pushing his passed pawns. Had white tried to drive off the knight by playing f4, then knight f3 check, king to f1. Obviously not king h1 because of rook cross h2 checkmate. So king f1, then rook t2, a good move. Because now if white plays, let's say knight to c4 just to drive up the rook, and then knight cross h2 check, king e1, knight f3 check, king f1, knight h2 check, king g1, knight f3 check, and draw with a perpetual check. So that's why white played a4 instead of f4. Now black played knight to e4. Black is trying another means of entry. White played a5. Again, a passed pawn must be pushed. Had white played f3 instead of a5, then knight g5 again threatens knight cross f3 and draw by perpetual check. So that's why after knight e4, white played a5. Now black played knight cross f2. White played a6 and black resigned. The passed pawn has only two more squares to cover and cannot be stopped. If black tries to play knight h3 check, then king f1, rook f2 check and king e1, and white wins easily. Obviously after knight h3 check, not king h1 because of knight g5, and a7 would be a blunder because of knight f3, and pawn promotes to queen, and then rook cross h2, and it's a checkmate. So that's why after knight h3 check, white can simply move to king f1 and rook f2 check and king e1, and white wins easily. So that was the game Pillsbury played against Mason. And from this game, we learned that to occupy the center with pawns, develop your pieces towards the center, try developing your pieces as quickly as possible, castle as early as possible, place your rooks on open file or half open file or files which is likely to be opened. And whenever possible, double up your rooks on a same file. Also, whenever possible, place your rooks on 7th or 8th rank. So I hope you learned something from this game as well. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Bye. I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.